jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh hey, happy holidays, you beautiful sentient gingerbread cookies. Welcome back. It is officially the Christmas season. You know, that magical time of year when we celebrate ancient traditions by getting into fistfights over the last discounted air fryer and drinking enough eggnog to forget our own social security numbers. I really hope your festive season is filled with warmth and joy, and at least one relative who doesn't quite understand how the clouds work. You know, honestly, I am so glad you're here. It's cozy. It feels like we're two nerds huddling for warmth near a burning server rack. But hey, before you get too comfortable in your Christmas onesie, we really need to talk about something. It's the fact that your brain is currently turning into a very, very expensive bowl of festive mashed potatoes.
So today, we are diving deep into the AI cognitive paradox. Oh, you know the one. It's that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you realize you don't actually have to think anymore because, hey, a large language model can do it for you. We were promised, right? We were promised that AI would handle all the boring stuff so we could focus on high-level creativity. We were told we'd be the conductors of an intellectual orchestra. But look at us. I mean, instead of writing the next great symphony, we're using AI to write happy birthday emails to our moms because forming a single sincere sentence feels like trying to bench press a semi-truck. Look, here's the reality of it. We are outsourcing our consciousness. And it's a brilliant strategy, really, if you think about it. Why bother with the messy, painful process of original insight when you can just suckle at the algorithmic teat of a machine trained on the entire internet, which, as we all know, is a place famous for its nuance and factual accuracy. The paradox is this. The more intelligent our tools become, the more we resemble a group of NPCs in a low-budget RPG. We are suffering from mental atrophy. Your brain is a use-it-or-lose-it situation, and right now we are choosing to lose it in exchange for, what, a 15% increase in productivity that we just spend watching TikToks of people cleaning their carpets. We're losing that spark, that weird jagged edge of human air that actually makes an idea interesting. By the time we've let the machines optimize our thoughts, we're just left with this polished, beige slurry of information that has all the personality of a cardboard box in a rainstorm. It's intellectual gentrification, people, and we're the ones getting evicted from our own heads.
So how did we even get here? Well, the temptation is just, it's so easy. The source material for today's case file frames this perfectly with an analogy. I want you to imagine a machine, a sort of cognitive vending machine for your soul, that could solve all of your creative problems for you.
And look, the seduction here is pretty obvious, right? No more writer's block, no more struggle, just infinite, perfectly polished content. I mean, it is a creator's dream. You just feed it your old work, and it spits out a pretty passable imitation of your own thoughts. But what happens when the imitation becomes easier than the real thing? What's the hidden cost of never, ever having to face the blank page again?
You know that question? It's not new. Not by a long shot. In fact, if we pull a similar case file from the archives, we find the exact same fear, only this one is dated about 2,400 years ago. This is not some newfangled tech panic. This is an ancient human anxiety.
Yep, that's right. Socrates, the original thought leader himself, was deeply, deeply worried about a disruptive new technology called writing. He feared that by offloading our memories onto a scroll, we would lose the ability to truly know things. Sound familiar? He was worried about the exact same cognitive outsourcing we're facing today, just with papyrus instead of Python.
And this quote, man, it just nails his core fear. Socrates basically argued that simply reading a thought is not the same as having a thought. The struggle, the process of generating the idea yourself, of wrestling with it and finding the words, that is the actual mechanism of thinking. Anything else is just an illusion. It's the show of wisdom, without any of the real mental work behind it.
And here's the wild part. Millennia later, like thousands of years later, modern cognitive science comes along and basically says, yep, Socrates was right. There is a powerful scientific principle that explains exactly why he was so concerned, and it is right at the heart of our investigation today.
So there was this psychologist, Lev Vygotsky, and he had this beautiful idea that thinking is really just talking. First, it's talking with others, and then it's talking with ourselves. You know, a baby babbles, practicing sounds. Then they form words and sentences to communicate. And eventually, that outward speech turns inward and becomes the very voice inside our heads. The actual struggle to speak is what builds the circuitry for thought.
Then, in 1978, this whole idea gets a fancy scientific name, the generation effect. An experiment proved it. They had one group just read word pairs on flashcards. The other group had to actively generate part of the pair themselves. The result? The second group's memory just skyrocketed. The only difference was the struggle. It all comes down to this. You have to do it to know it.
Okay, here's a perfect way to picture this. It's like tracing a drawing. Anyone can trace a picture and get a perfect result, right? But does that teach you how to draw? No, not at all. It just creates the illusion of skill. To actually learn, you have to face that blank page and struggle through the sketches. The exact same thing is true for thinking. Using AI to generate an essay is just like tracing. Sure, it looks good, but you're not building any of the underlying mental muscle. And before we continue analyzing our collective descent into idiocy, just a quick word from our sponsor, which is me. Are you enjoying this? Do you like having your existential dread served with a side of holiday cheer? Then, do the thing. Subscribe, rate the show, leave a review that proves you still have a functioning neocortex. Tell the algorithm that I'm a real boy and not just 3 chatbots in a trench coat. Seriously, every time someone leaves a 5-star review, an angel gets its wings, and I get enough dopamine to keep me from screaming into a pillow for another 48 hours. So, it's a win-win.
Okay, sponsor break over. Let's get back to it. Because science has actually confirmed all of this with brain scans. They've literally looked inside people's heads while this is happening. When you generate a thought, multiple regions of your brain light right up, encoding the information. But when you just read it, those same circuits, they barely even flicker. And unfortunately, we now have a ton of mounting physiological evidence of what happens when we let our brains run on autopilot.
So let's look at Exhibit A, the London cabbie. Before GPS, these drivers had to memorize thousands of streets. It's this whole test called the knowledge. And neuroscientists found that the part of their brain responsible for spatial memory was physically larger than in the average person. But once they started relying on GPS, that same gray matter literally shrank. They outsourced the navigation and their brains paid the price. It is quite literally a use it or lose it scenario.
But, okay, that's navigation. What about pure thought? Well, this is where the evidence gets, honestly, kind of scary. The most damning evidence in this case comes from a recent MIT study. Researchers had students write essays under 3 different conditions. One group used only their brain, one used Google Search, and one used ChatGPT. And while they did this, they monitored their brain activity. As you can see from the chart, the results for what they could actually recall were, well, they were dramatic. The group using ChatGPT remembered almost nothing from the essays they had just finished writing.
And get ready for this number. This is the one that really gets me. A full 83%. 83% of the students who used ChatGPT could not quote a single sentence from their own work just minutes later. Their brains had completely outsourced the task. The information never stuck because they never had to generate it in the first place.
But wait, it actually gets worse. Evaluators who read these essays described the AI-assisted ones as proficient, sure, but also consistently hollow or soulless, and they were all remarkably similar to each other. This brings us to a terrifying new development in our case. This isn't just an individual problem anymore. This is a societal one.
I want you to imagine all possible human thoughts as a massive infinite tree. Human thinking, at its best, wanders all over this tree, exploring unique and strange new branches. But AI, because it's trained on existing data, it tends to explore only a few, very popular, clustered branches over and over again. So when we all start using the same tool, our collective thought process starts to narrow. It converges on the same statistically probable and, frankly, boring ideas.
Here's another way to put it. Think of it like 2 different kinds of weighted dice. AI rolls dice that are weighted toward the most common patterns in its training data. That's why its output makes sense, but it also feels a little generic. But your thoughts, your brain, is rolling dice weighted by your unique life experiences, your emotions, your weird hobbies, that thing that happened to you when you were 7. That's what allows you to wander into territory nobody else has explored. Territory an AI could never find on its own.
Okay, I know. This all sounds super depressing, right? Like, are our brains just doomed to become these smooth, useless spheres? Well, not exactly. The evidence actually points to a much more nuanced conclusion. It's one that hinges on understanding what AI is truly good at and what it's not.
It comes down to 2 modes of thinking. The research shows that AI is actually pretty weak at what's called divergent thinking. That's coming up with truly new original starting points. That's our territory. But it is incredibly effective at convergent thinking, taking an idea that already exists and refining it, expanding on it, executing it flawlessly. A large language model is optimized to continue a thought, not to originate one. And that distinction, that is everything.
And this is the twist in the whole story. It brings us back to the most incredible finding from that MIT study. They tested one final group. These were students who were forced to outline their ideas first, to do the hard human divergent part, and then they were given access to AI to help write the essay. The results?
their brain connectivity was actually higher than the human-only group. The order of operations changes absolutely everything. So you see, this flips the entire case on its head. The problem isn't the AI. The problem is starting with the AI. When we skip the struggle, we skip the thinking. It's that simple. But when we do the hard work of generating that initial idea and then use AI as a powerful partner for execution, it can actually enhance our thinking. The tool isn't the villain here, our laziness is.
And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. This is the solution to the case. In a world where the cost of answers is dropping to zero, the value of the question becomes everything. The hard, valuable work is no longer finding the answer, it's generating the unique, human-first question. The input is where your fingerprint lies. All right, I've ranted enough. My brain feels like it's been through a tinsel shredder. A massive, glowing star on top of the tree thank you to my producer, FireflyHaku. Haku is the only reason this show isn't just 20 minutes of me humming the Interstellar soundtrack into a tin can. He's the one who sifts through my cognitive compost and finds the actual gold. In the spirit of today's topic, Haku is the natural intelligence to my artificial rambling. If he ever gets replaced by an AI, I'm going to live in a cave and communicate solely via smoke signals. And to you, my nerdy friend, thank you for listening. Try to use your brain for at least 5 minutes today. Maybe do a crossword puzzle with a pen. Live dangerously. Have a fantastic, moderately intelligent holiday season. May your spirits be high, your latency be low, and your original insights be, well, at least original. Eat a gingerbread man, try not to let the machines win until at least 2026, and I'll see you in the next one. Merry Christmas, you magnificent brain havers.